From the field to a field day now, as Nebraska Extension recently held its Soybean Gall Midge Regional Field Day near Mead. The event was put on by a multi-state team of Extension entomologists and emphasized interactive learning about this pest through field demonstrations. Market Journal's Mike Straub has more on the lessons and presentations. Mike?
Soybean Gall Midge has been affecting crops in Nebraska and surrounding states. Recently, Nebraska Extension held a field day in hopes to help pass along important information.
Broadly speaking, we're covering a lot of different topics today. One of the tents actually we're nearby is germplasm, planting dates, insecticides, and seed treatments. Those are some of the core things that growers are really looking for in the case of germplasm. In the case of planting dates, kind of a sore subject. Every grower wants to get his crop in early. We've got biological control and hailing as two other new tactic in terms of hailing and maybe hard to adopt. And then biocontrol, not really found in Nebraska yet, but hopeful on that. And then our other tent is kind of a wild card tent with 16 different topics on soybean gall midge. So we're trying to cover breadth and then a bit of depth on a few key topics. We have a lot of other states that are looking for soybean gall midge, want to know if it's around, and then we have growers in our state and adjacent states that are having a lot of problem. So an event like this is a good chance for us to all get in the field, see gall midge firsthand, look at management tactics that are under pressure, and talk about some of the challenges they're facing, the observations they have, and then also what they might want to take away from this for their own farm in terms of what they're dealing with and how they might want to manage it at that site.
Some counties that have not had problems with soybean gall midge in the past are starting to see the effects. This is a growing issue that does not seem to be going away anytime soon.
The field behind me is evidence of that. We're looking at 70 to 80% dead plants behind me. I think on an angle probably that this camera is looking at looks maybe better, and as you walk out into the field there's a lot more dead plants as you kind of get that over the top view. So yeah, it's still a growing problem. We started our surveys just earlier this week. Southern Lancaster County, that's typically been fairly quiet, has a lot of pressure this year. So the pressure shifts, but it's certainly there and abundant. I know Iowa's facing a lot of challenges this year. And so gall midge is out there, it's still causing problems, and it's not going away by what we know about it already.
But hail damage late.
One factor that seems to increase the risk is late hail damage to your soybeans. If you've had an unfortunate visit from the big white combine, scouting for soybean gall midge is important.
No grower wants to see the white combine show up before harvest. When it shows up, I think they're focused on what's left in that crop and some relatively new information, but hidden kind of source to that field might be additional gall midge in the field. So gall midge is limited to the base of the plants within about 1 inch to 2 inches off the soil surface where there are these fissures in the plant. But if we get hail, that opens up other places on the plant where that insect can get into. We could see 5 times the number of larvae per plant with hail damaged plants. And so we want growers to be aware, consultants and others, of the risk that may pose for not that field. That field's got its own fate, but adjacent fields planted the following year might be a greater risk. It feeds at the base of the plant, so a good comparison to this is Dectes stem borer. As 2 insects both feed right at the base of the plant at some point during their development cycle. Dectes feeds on the pith, it's the inner core, kind of corky area of the plant. There's not a lot of nutrients or water move through that area, so that's why Dectes doesn't really cause much for yield losses. Soybean gall midge feeds on the really precious part of what we need to keep for yield, which is the xylem, the water movement part of the plant, and the phloem, the nutrient part of the plant. And so it cuts off those 2 key components, movement of water and movement of nutrients. And as you can see behind me, once they do that for long enough, they basically kill the plants in the field. Populations need to be high enough, but clearly behind us we're reaching that type of number.
Some tactics used to eliminate soybean gall midge may sit outside the comfort zone for some producers. Attending future field days might be something to consider if you think you have an infestation.
Later planting dates, that's something growers don't want to hear. Drop nozzles, something they don't want to use. Hailing, a practice of tillage that's mostly left our system, a lot of no-till farmers. Those are probably the 3 big ones. Biocontrol is a low percentage of things that we're finding that have actually been infested or do have biological agents in them. So a lot of the tactics are just not terribly favorable for how we normally grow soybeans. A grower with narrow road soybeans, planting in 15s or 20-inch rows, really relying on host plant resistance coming along and providing something that we can put in the ground. Host plant resistance is our kind of key target area and hopeful area that we want to get to. I guess the other part the growers are hoping for is that we discover a pheromone for soybean gall midge. That's work done through Ian Kesey here at University of Nebraska. And that would improve the tracking of this insect when it first emerges in the spring.
With soybean gall midge ramping up in the area, it's important to keep an eye out for any symptoms that may indicate an infestation. Make sure to look for future field days to learn new tactics to combat the pest. Reporting for Market Journal, I'm Mike Straub.